In its simplest terms, biodiversity is the number of different species that call a particular area home. Biodiversity provides us with a number of services that are sometimes called ecological services. They provide us with food, they provide us with building materials, they filter our water and keep water clean, and in many cases, species perform functions that we haven't yet identified, and it's important to preserve these species, not only for the roles they play in supporting human lives, but also because they've evolved here for millions of years, we have the responsibility to make sure they stay here and they don't go extinct on our watch. So far, you've seen some examples of some of the fascinating biodiversity that calls the St. Lawrence River its home. In this episode, we're going to focus on human impact, some of the ways that the things that we do every day impact biodiversity, and usually that's in a negative way. We'll also learn about some success stories and some of the ways you can help minimize your impact. It's very easy to take large conspicuous structures like the power dam behind us and blame big industry for all of the impacts it has on biodiversity. But the reality is people themselves control the products they use, the energy they expend, and if we want to protect biodiversity, everybody has to embrace solutions, and we have to learn some of the ways we can impact the environment in a positive way.
Unfortunately, biodiversity is on a decline. So there are a few things that are happening, and that's why it is on a decline, because of a thing we call, an acronym we say, is HIPPO. So H for habitat loss, I for invasive species, P for pollution, the other P for population, and O for overexploitation. So let's give me some examples. So habitat loss. Who can give me an example of habitat loss?
Say cutting down a forest.
So cutting down a forest. So where did all the species go? They've got to find a new space, or they just kind of die off. So the next one, invasive species. Why are invasive species bad?
Because they're taking all the resources of the plants that were already here.
So you guys gave a good example of that with the purple loosestrife kind of taking over, taking the spot of something native like the cattails here. So how do humans pollute the environment?
They use factories to build stuff, and all that pollution goes in the air.
Perfect. What else?
Driving cars.
Driving cars. What else?
From maybe boats that crash and they leave all that oil.
Wonderful. That's a great example that just happened in Cornwall. So how does population affect our ecosystems?
Because we have to make more neighborhoods, and more neighborhoods means less space for the animals.
Perfect, yeah. Overexploitation, so that's a little bit harder. So over-harvesting.
When boats, they go put their nets and they catch like every fish swims in. They catch like gazillions in one net.
Exactly, so if we're overusing all that, that's really causing an effect on our biodiversity, isn't it? So there are many effects of the loss of biodiversity, and those are just a few examples. So biodiversity is great. We use it every day for food, for our clean air, all sorts of things. So we really want to help preserve biodiversity.
It's really easy as individuals to say, well, it's just one paper coffee cup, or it's just one plastic water bottle, and it can't really have that big an impact. But when those small impacts are repeated by hundreds or even thousands of people, those little impacts become big impacts. All of the plastics that we're throwing away, a lot of it ends up in the river, and over tens of years, over like 10, 15, 20 years, the plastic breaks into smaller and smaller pieces, and now we're finding little bits of plastic in the stomachs of fish, even in the St. Lawrence River, right here near Cornwall. We don't know if that's making the fish sick yet, but it's probably not a good thing. You know, if your stomach was filling up with plastic instead of food, you'd probably not feel very well. You probably wouldn't be very healthy. So we're going to do a little demonstration of how much plastic people actually put into the environment. So when you come home with groceries, or when your parents come home with groceries, doing, say, 1 week's worth of groceries for your family, how many grocery bags does it take to carry all those groceries home? So let's say every family gets seven bags each week. So just the city of Cornwall, how many people live in Cornwall, do you think? It's somewhere between 40 and 50,000. So let's be conservative. Let's say 40,000. So let's say on average there's 4 people in a household. So if we divide that by 4, we end up with 10,000 families or groups of people who live together doing groceries. That means every week times 7 grocery bags. So that's 70,000 grocery bags each week. Probably every family goes away and they're not even in Cornwall for a couple of weeks. Let's say there's 50, that we're home for 50 weeks. That's how many grocery bags get thrown away each year. 3,500,000 grocery bags. So that's a lot of grocery bags. That doesn't include the pop cans, the pop bottles, the water bottles. So we're going to figure out, after all of these bags, the 3.5 million bags get thrown out in 1 year by Cornwall, we're going to find out how much space that takes in our landfill sites, the places where all the garbage goes. This is a graduated cylinder. It's just a fancy name for a long, skinny cup with measuring lines that measure volume. So we're going to measure how much space. So let's just stuff these in there one at a time. This will be like our mini garbage truck or a mini garbage dump. You guys keep counting as you do it. And so we're packing them down just the way they'd be packed inside a garbage truck or packed inside a dump. All right, so 20 bags is equal to 500 mils. So we're going to figure out the volume we throw away in Cornwall in 1 year. So we end up with 87,500 liters. If everyone in Cornwall used plastic bags, and on average every family brought home 7 bags, probably on average people bring more, that's pretty scary. All of that plastic has to go somewhere, and we take up natural habitat and we dig big giant holes and we just pack that into the earth. Using plastic bags can really add up to a major environmental problem, and the solution in that case is obvious. If we use less, we have less of an impact on the environment. But there's lots of other things you can do as well. One of the things that is contributed to loss of biodiversity is loss of habitat or degradation of habitat. And at the River Institute, we have a variety of programs to improve habitat for different species. We're putting up roosting boxes for bats so that they can have safe, secure places to roost where they're not in conflict with humans. We've been deploying turtle basking platforms so that turtles have safe, adequate basking habitat where they can sun themselves and warm up. And lots of organizations, including local conservation authorities and birding clubs, have for years been deploying nesting boxes for birds, and in many cases, for example, eastern bluebirds, purple martins, these are species that have made small comebacks because of the efforts of these conservation initiatives, and it's easy to get involved in any of these. You can contact your local conservation authority, you can contact the River Institute, or you can initiate your own program. But some issues are bigger and require the involvement of government agencies and industry. One of them is the situation of major power dams. The issue is the St. Lawrence River is a major migration corridor for eels. Eels naturally migrate upstream, and that upstream migration was cut off when the Moses Saunders power generating station was built. And so the Ontario Power Generation people were the first to produce or build rather an eel ladder specifically to allow eels to migrate up through the dam and get from the downstream St. Lawrence River side of the dam to the upstream side, where they could continue on into Lake Ontario and grow and mature. Over the years, Ontario Power Generation has gradually refined and improved the eel ladder, and they also participate in monitoring of eel populations to help researchers try to find ways to improve the eel populations and restore those population numbers to historical levels. So I want to finish this episode on human impacts with a positive story. We've learned some of the ways that human activities can harm biodiversity, reduce biodiversity, but this area right behind me about 20 years or so ago was a flat, even mowed lawn, and now it's a vibrant habitat in the middle of downtown Cornwall. We took an area of mowed grass, we turned it into a meandering creek that is now home to turtles, cutlet minnows, and several other rare and threatened species. So I want to leave you with this message. We can all make a difference in the things we do or don't do. You can choose to say no to plastic water bottles, and if we all work a little bit harder, we can have more success stories like this project behind me, Rotary Creek in Cornwall, Ontario.